Thanks for staying on LN 24/7. This is Politics Now. My name is Morno Balagbobo. When you talk about the polity in Nigeria, there is just so much to talk about. But tonight, we will start to talk about Tinubu's administration, the road to 1 year in office. But let's begin to break down what is going on in President Bola Tinubu's administration. Earlier today, the Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, chaired a high-level dialogue on advancing the gains made within the past 1 year of the administration. The event is part of efforts by the administration to leverage international cooperation in delivering the promises of the Renewed Hope Agenda. And the Vice President's keynote address is titled Delivering the Renewed Hope Agenda through Enhanced International Cooperation, Imperative Opportunities and Challenges. It also seeks collaborative efforts that will propel Nigeria towards a future of enriched international cooperation and focus on how to strengthen international alliances that creates a multiplier effect of the administration's collective efforts. And the event also examined the work done by the administration in the past 1 year and areas for consolidation. So hopefully this will translate into helping the government focus on driving solid socioeconomic gains that will benefit Nigerians. Well, tonight we will focus the attention of our conversation with our guest, who I will introduce shortly to you, on policies, just some of them, and quite a few reactions from Nigerians on the administration of President Bola Tinubu as we gradually approach May 29th, which is a significant date that marks the president's 1 year in office. So these are a few of our talking points. We'll look at recently the alleged abuse of the pension fund. We'll look at the outrage over 19 billion naira for Hajj subsidy. We'll talk about the electricity tariff hike, matters arising. There's just a lot to unpack regarding that issue, and also the looming ASU strike. Well, with me on set today is again Arome, who is a policy analyst, founding partner, and executive director of CLD Africa program. Thank you so much, Arome, for having me on the show.
Thank you very much.
You want to make some comments about it?
Yes, I want to say this is something beautiful to be back to Nigeria. I've been away for some few months.
Most definitely. We've been trailing all your activities.
And it's a beautiful thing to be back at home, and the politics is something that is quite interesting. Nigerian politics is something that it sets the pace for African politics, and I'm very, very certain that we are taking the lead in Africa. So it's beautiful to be back at home. It's not something different what we are hearing in the news, the pension scam. Let's just take it back to what it has been.
But we will break it down. But before we get into the conversation proper, Arome, I don't know, just your overview of 1 year. Because, I mean, by this time, May, there was so much, will I call it anxiety, anxiousness in the polity regarding the elections as a whole. But everybody has come to terms with the fact that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the president of the country. But the question is, in the midst of, subsidy removal, unification of exchange rates, and all the blah-de-da policies executed by the president for the benefit of Nigeria, how well, would you say he has fared? Recently, Bishop Kuka was at the State House in Abuja, and he was saying that 1 year is not enough to judge what the president has done so far. So let's just start from there before we move to some of the key things we have highlighted to talk about tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just look at the 1 year. Yeah, I agree with Bishop Kuka that 1 year is not a good time to actually to decide or to totally measure the impact or the achievement of this particular government. They have 3 years more to go, so we should look forward to the next 3 years. But looking at the first 1 year, we could say that, to an extent, that the president have made some very good, taking some very good steps. And on other strand, you could also see that there are steps that this government have taken that is not being thought through. And I would take example from the very first day in the office when the president actually removed the subsidy removal and all of that. I felt that was not something that was actually thought through before that statement went out on the day of inauguration, and we saw how that actually put the Nigerian economy on a very shaky fold, shaky stand.
And it's still shaky. I don't know if you've seen the recent statistics of the inflation figures.
It will continue rising if we have not sit back to look at the issue critically. I think this is when we need to talk about adapting approaches like the problem tree approach, like looking at what are the root cause of this particular problem,
and not just treating it, and not just treating it. Because when you also look at the naira gains, there was a time, I think weeks back, we saw appreciation of the naira, and now on Wednesday it appreciated a bit, and the latest figures from today, Friday, it depreciated again. So I mean, we're just in this back and forth.
Well, I think those that are managing the Nigerian economy, there are things that they are not telling us. What's happening to our foreign reserve? What are they using our foreign reserve to do? There are different whisper here and there that the foreign reserve is also being used to cushion the high rise of the variation between the dollar and the naira. So that is something that they have not come out clear to open up to us what's happening to our foreign reserve. It will continue oscillating. Nigeria is not. We are not export. What are we exporting? If you compare our export rate to our import rate, you could see how our import is higher. What we bring into the country is higher than what we take out of the country. So until we deal this, until we have a balance between our export and import, forget about it. The whole thing around naira and dollar would keep rising and keep falling and all of that.
Now, let's get to the business of the day. Let's start first with the alleged abuse of our pension fund. The Minister of Finance, Wale Odun, refuted allegations suggesting the Nigerian federal government's intention to utilize 20 trillion naira from the pension fund for infrastructure projects. And in a press statement issued on Thursday, Odun underscored the government's adherence to established regulations governing pension funds, assuring that there were no plans to transgress these legal boundaries, and also recalled that this same finance minister said with about 20 trillion pension fund assets in Nigeria, there is a clear opportunity to channel resources into vital sectors such as housing and long-term mortgage provision. So I don't know, it's like a play of words here, because Nigerians just quickly inferred that the pension funds, were going to be used until, he had to come out yesterday to make that clarification. But for him to insinuate that in the first place, raised a lot of concerns. I don't know, what are your thoughts regarding the plates, to go for people's pensions?
Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speak. So definitely this is something that has been cooked on the inside within, among the kitchen cabinet of the president. So it's a discussion that has been had at the background. So maybe he couldn't help it, but just to give Nigerians sort of like a feeling of what we are going to do. But it's so surprising to see that in pension administration in Nigeria, it's something that if you compare it to what it is around the world, Nigeria is nowhere to be seen when it comes to, in terms of the MECA Global Pension Index. We see countries like Netherlands topping the charts. And why is this country topping the chart? Because pension in Netherlands, for example, or the Nordic country, is sustainable. The payout is there is an accessibility in terms of payout to the participant. There is integrity. But over the time, we have seen that pension administration in Nigeria, administering the pension fund in Nigeria, is something that is not, is not transparent. The whole charade around the military pension. Talk about the police pension. Then you now bring it down to the other pension pension system.
Most especially in the civil service.
Most especially in the civil service. So for me, as an ordinary Nigerian, let me put it that way. I will not be happy to pay a pension. I will not be happy that my employer should contribute to any pension scheme, because it's an outright scam. Now, we have not dealt with the issue of transparency. So if Wale Edu is saying that to us, we need to ask him questions too. We need to ask the different pension administrators to come up with a transparent account of what this money had been used for. How has this money been invested over the period of time? Have there been interest paid back to the participants in the different pension administrations? If there are, how much of this interest have been paid out to the different participants? Let's look at it and then begin to compare it. If the government is interested in taking money from the pension scheme, they should be also ready to pay back. They should borrow the money, just like they go to the international community, the World Bank,
another
the Chinese
thing
bank.
that could be of concern for people is, governments come and go. So what if you do this and then maybe in 2027 you don't get elected into office, and then another person comes and says, okay, that was, President Bola Tinubu's administration. I'm here for a new thing. So no wonder you could feel the outcry, especially workers who have been working. I mean, the workers are still debating what's going to be the new minimum wage and all of that. Even government said, 48,000. But you can remember, so the little that they've been able, to keep for their retirement, they would want to protect it. So you can't fault people to make an outcry, so to speak.
It's our money. It's my money. I should be able to speak for it. If the government is going for, first, we should recount that government in Africa and even in Nigeria is not reflective of what the needs of the people are. We define, just like we normally say, that democracy is the government of the people, by the people and for the people. But in most cases, it's government of the people, by the people and for the politicians. So it's the government of the politicians and for the politicians. So
this is your revised definition.
This is my revised definition.
What
this
democracy means in the Nigerian context.
But if we look at it critically, there is nothing about us there is nothing, no decisions that the government is taking that is with our input. They take these decisions just the way they want to take the decision. And this decision doesn't favor us.
When you look at what the government wants to do with these funds, it's geared for the people. But when you look at, when you go back to the people themselves, you want to check, okay, how far has it impacted on the lives of people? That seems to be
I want to ask a simple
big
question.
problem.
I want to ask a simple question. Why should Wale be talking about housing when we have the Federal Mortgage Bank? What has happened to the money that we are contributing to the housing fund that is taking, that's the part of our salary?
And we have a Minister of Infrastructure.
And we have a Minister of Infrastructure. So what has happened to that money that workers in Nigeria are contributing to the housing fund? So we should be interrogating that. If we are looking for money to invest in housing, we should not be looking at people's pension. We should be looking at taking money from the Federal Mortgage Bank to invest in housing, and not talking about going after people's pension. My pension is for me to enjoy when I retire from active service, not for you to use it to build a house for me when I have contributed some amount of money that should be used in building a house for me.
And we keep talking about how to generate funds as a country, because Nigerians are just coming out of the brunt of, okay, these are cybersecurity levy. We are not okay with it. And we'll come to the issue of the electricity tariff hike and all the matters surrounding it too. These are key issues that people seems to have with President Tinubu's administration. Like, when he first came, it's like, let the poor people breathe. But now
are we breathing? Are we breathing?
That is a big question. The administration seems to have, a very capitalist approach to handling matters. We all know that capitalism, is survival of the fittest. Not everybody is being able to be carried along when you look at a capitalist-driven government.
Well, capitalism, to say, for me, it's not a problem here. There is a capitalism. There is a capitalist system with a human face. The U.S. is a capitalist.
But do you think this administration is approaching things in that direction?
Oh my! You agree with me that this administration is not approaching issues from that perspective. I think the whole E-level or cyber security levy, it's something that cut across Africa. I think it's a learning across the different countries in Africa. If you go to countries like Uganda, come to countries like Ghana, they also have this same sort of e-levy that is imposed on each fund you transfer from your financial bank account. So I think the question for me is cyber security. Why are we paying for that? How protected is our cyberspace? What is that money meant to be used for?
The question is guarantee. Like, if I'm involved, I'm a victim of scam, how does that cover me? If there is an explanation for that, then probably, maybe Nigerians will not really have an issue.
But already the money is being taken, but there is no explanation for that. So we should begin from, asking that question and getting response to that question. How does that cover? How does that protect those that their money is being taken? Let me give you an example. A financial institution in this country, while I was away on a study program in the United Kingdom, they took some amount of money from my own account, and I've spoken to a number of persons because I've written letters, I've sent emails, and there is no response to it. And I spoke to a particular lawyer to help me push the case in court, and he said, I can't take this particular bank to court because that's also part of what we are saying. So if the government is taking money as cyber security, levying me for cyber security, there should be modality in place that should also protect me, that is a citizen, that have no stake in business in terms of cyber crime. But these things are not in place. What are the modalities that the government have put in place? Does this cover me, that is an ordinary citizen, or it covers those within a particular height in the society, those within the political class? So these are clarifications that I think the government needs to make in terms of taking this money. What is this money?
That is why they are calling for a review of that cybersecurity. But how will it play? There's a clarification that, okay, this does not really affect every Nigerian, which the Nigerian Senate had to clarify, over the course of the week. But another thing is that the most important thing, rather, is that the government actually listened and put it on hold. But on hold means it's still coming back. But whatever the modalities will be now is what we don't know. But, well, I guess, just like you said, it has to be properly thought through. Now, I want us to move on to the conversation that has to do with the 19 billion naira for Hajj subsidy. Just a disclaimer to state clearly that this is not a bid to, say, okay, we don't have... Nigeria is a religious country. We're free to believe what we want to believe in. So this is not like a move against brothers and sisters who are Muslim. But when you look at the figure, it raises a lot of concern. And this has to do with the vice president, who said that many Nigerians have condemned President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's approval of 90 billion naira to subsidize the cost of this year's Hajj pilgrimage. And the vice president now made the announcement during the inaugural Hajj airlift at the Ahmadu Bello International Airport in Kebbi State on Wednesday. And this, raised a lot of concerns, okay, that's really, really a lot. Now, Arome, you've traveled a lot, so I know it's very expensive to go outside the country. Yes. So one has to put that into consideration when trying to reason out 90 billion. But 90 billion to the average Nigerian, it strikes a chord like, that's too much.
The first thing that came to my mind when I heard of the whole Hajj conversation, it's and I don't want to look at it from the Hajj perspective. I want to look at it from the pilgrimage perspective, both Christians and our Muslim brothers. Yeah. The first question I ask is, what is to what end? What is the economic advantage of this particular pilgrimage to Nigeria? What have we how has that impacted on our economy? How has this impacted positively on our educational system? How has this impacted positively on our value as a country over the period of time that this money have been expended by the country?
Justify why we should
spend 90 billion naira, 90 billion to subsidize it.
I won't say in defense of the government, because I remember reading the news reports from, I think, Imo State, where the Christian pilgrim personnel, Bishop, can't place my hands on his name again, but he was making reference to Governor Uzodimma sponsoring 1,000 people to go to Israel, and like the prayers really helped to, bring the insecurity situation in the state down. So some would want to argue that, I mean, when people go on pilgrimage, they make prayers for the country, and then Nigerians will benefit from, they are going to
I'm a Christian.
To Mecca or Jerusalem.
Yeah, I am a Christian. I am a Christian, and I believe in prayer. I believe that God answers prayer, and I'll not rule that out, that God answers the prayers of Nigeria. But this is what I will tell you. This is what I will say to you. How many Nigerians are praying for this country? What about the woman in the village that did not go for Hajj, that did not go for Hajj or go to Jerusalem for pilgrimage, that is praying for this country? So God can
answer your prayer everywhere
you are. We don't need to go to Mecca. We don't need to go to Jerusalem for God to answer our prayer. So it's not a problem of going to Mecca. So forget, security is not, for me, if you look at it critically, security of a nation is not totally something that we should subject to a particular religious ritual. Why do I say that? Security is a physical thing. It's a number of policemen that are out there that are guarding the different police posts. It's a number of the military men that are out there every day protecting our territorial integrity, or the naval men that are on the water protecting our, maritime, our territorial integrity on the maritime, on the waterways. So it is not a thing of prayer. It is not a thing of who is praying for Nigeria in Mecca, who is praying for Nigeria in Jerusalem. It's a thing of these young men and young women that are out there that are, risking their life to defend the integrity, the territorial integrity, and the security of this country. So
now, when
let's excuse that statement and focus on the issue that
when government makes such announcements, mention these figures, 20 billion, 90 billion. Do you think it helps on the part of government to do a breakdown so that it makes sense? Because when you just throw out a figure like that, Nigerians are educated. Nigerians will research and try to get to the nitty-gritty of every single detail to try to justify every decision that they make. Do you think that would have made any difference?
For me, I'm not even looking at that. The money is not supposed to be spent on this right at this time in this country. As we straighten,
whether it is for Hajj or whether it is for Israel or Jerusalem.
Anything. As we straightening, seriously, students are going, if 90 billion, come on. If this is spent on the Nigerian educational system, public education, which add a lot of value to us economically, politically, socially, culturally, we are not looking at that. So what is the value? What is the value? What is the economic value of spending 90 billion, or let me put it at 180 billion, because I'm trying to look at how much will be spent on the Christian pilgrimage, so that it will not be like we are condemning.
We're just focusing on the monies marked for Hajj.
For Hajj. So we are looking at both the Christian pilgrimage and the Muslim pilgrimage. So why is the government spending that whooping sum of money on pilgrimage? People just go there for tourism's sake. Israel is making their own money,
boosting the economy of these nations.
Yes, of this country. So why don't we focus on building our own? God can hear our prayer anywhere. God can hear our prayer from it. So we don't need to go to Mecca. We don't need to go to Jerusalem before God hears our prayer.
Well,
so let's stay back.
The word
let's spend that money
used,
on education.
They said subsidy. So if we are subsidizing it,
so why don't we subsidize education?
Well, the president has a student loan, which is another conversation for another time. And that is going to go up. The person in charge, Dr. Sawyer, put it out that it's going to go live. The website is going to go live on the 24th of May. So we're hoping that that actually goes live.
That we don't have a proper
it ought to have been on, I think back in January rather, but it's been postponed and modified. But we'll definitely get a chance to talk to Dr. Sawyer, hopefully next week or some other time. But let's move to another issue, as we gearing up to mark President Tinubu's 1 year in office. Another issue that is really concerning the polity has to do with the electricity tariff. And of course, recently the Nigerian Senate on Thursday further, talked about the consideration of the report of its committee that investigates planned hike in electricity tariff. This resolution followed divergent views from the debate on the report of the Senate Committee on Power over the need to halt the proposed increase by distribution companies. These led to the resolve of lawmakers to stop any deliberation on the report because the matter was now before the courts and therefore subjudiced. And the suspension of the report of the committee came after Chairman Rules and Business Senator Titus Tatinja drew the attention of the Senate to Order 52 of its standing rules, saying that the order restrains lawmakers from entertaining any matter before a court of law. It was, of course, supported by Senator Jimo, although some lawmakers have divergent opinions on the subject matter to suspend further deliberations on the committee report, but were overruled by the Deputy Senate President Barau Jibrin, who presided over Thursday's plenary session. Let's just take a listen to what Senator Aberibe, Chairman Senate Committee on Power, and the Deputy Senate President said on this particular matter. And we'll talk some more with our guest.
Order, because I need
reference.
I need to rule on that order.
Yeah, but let me give you the whole order because he took part of the order. Well, in the opinion of the President of the Senate, not just that you stop anything.
In the process, is the chairman of the Rules and Business Committee. I think having raised the issue by the chairman of Rules and Business Committee, we need to tarry a while. Go with his observation and then try to give time to consult our legal department to see if we can continue. This is my opinion, I cannot disregard the suggestion or the observation by the chairman of Rules and Business. That will not be fair. So we are not saying that we will not continue with the report, but let's stand it down until we resolve the legal issues involved. Your order is sustained. So please, let's leave a while, and maybe by next sitting we can conclude the process after taking the advice of our legal department.
All right, those were the thoughts of the upper house of the of the Senate, rather. Now, I do recall, I'll get to your reactions, Arame, but the Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, said that those grumbling over the electricity tariff increase for Band A customers are people who are not paying electricity bills. Now, since the NERC announced the hike in electricity tariff across the nation for Band A customers, moving from 65 naira to 225 naira, the government has attracted condemnation from many sectors of the country, including even the organized labor, who say they're going to shut headquarters of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, which they did, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, and the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, AEDC headquarters, over the recent hike in electricity tariff. Now, I want you to make sense from what the senators just said regarding this issue that is still raising heads. The federal government has made it clear that, they're not going back on this. They went back on the CBN levy, but this is definitely not looking like it's going to be reversed anytime soon. So how do you make sense of these developments regarding the issue of electricity tariff hike?
Yeah, people protecting their business, people protecting their business interests. not minding how it affects the everyday Nigerian on the streets, and for the Minister for Power to say that those crying for over the electricity tariff are those who are not paying electricity. I think paying for electricity bill. I think he needs to retract that particular statement. Yeah, because I pay electricity bill. Perhaps he's the one that is not paying electricity bill, using my hard-earned money, my tax that I pay to this country every day to sustain him and pay for all what he's using. So for me, I think it's a group of people that are protecting their business interest. Yes, I know power is expensive everywhere in the world. For example, in Ghana, we all hear that there is power in Ghana, sustainable power to an extent compared to Nigeria in Ghana. But if you would enjoy that sustained power in Ghana, you should also be ready to pay for it. I know it's expensive everywhere to pay for a sustainable power supply, but this is what I'm saying. Now, that takes me back to the whole conversation about the 90 billion pilgrims, or 180, assumed 108 billion. It's not 180 billion, but I'm looking at it from both sides now. That takes me back to that subsidy. So why shouldn't the government subsidize electricity for those who cannot afford it, instead of hiking the price for band A? For me, I'm staying in a place that is categorized as band
that
A.
it doesn't, those on band A, not every Nigerian rather is on band A. So based on that, it doesn't really make any sense to say they're going back on the hike.
But you will agree with me that when there is an increase on anything in Nigeria, it cut across both band A and not band A.
The question is, do you think the minister doesn't, take cognizance of the fact that there are Nigerians who are into businesses? We're talking about, when we say the average Nigerians, it's like he's just referring to people maybe who don't have enough money to, get this particular commodity. But what about SMEs who depend on power? What responsible businessman or woman, is going to go on a business and say he's not going to require power? And band A should be definitely the best, supply of power available for businesses. And that affects people, who work. Because if they don't have power, then
They
probably
can't work.
Will they be able to do the work they have to do to generate monies to pay their workers? Can you just help us make sense of what the minister seems to be missing out?
So this is going to have a ripple effect on everything in this country. It's going to have a ripple effect on commodity sales in this country. It's going to have a ripple effect on transport. It's going to have a ripple effect on education. We tend to miss that, when some of them, and pardon me to say this, sometimes I have some sort of soft spot for some of them in government. I don't envy them at all. But on the other hand, when they make this very bold and loud statement, there is a missing link. And this is where we need to go back to thinking through policies, thinking through approach, thinking through decisions of government before we throw out some of this policy statement or policy document. Now, the Minister for Power have not also... Probably they took that decision in isolation of the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, the Ministry of Labor and Productivity, to sit down to look at it. What is going to be the resultant effect of this hike on the day-to-day lives of Nigerians? How is this going to affect the young child that is going to a public school? How is this going to affect the SMEs? That is the life wire, that is the fulcrum of the Nigerian economy. Now, there are many Nigerians. I met someone in Ghana, the few periods I spent in Ghana, I met some people that own startup, that moved their startup from Nigeria to Ghana. This is going to have a very huge effect on our employability level. There are several persons that are going to be unemployed.
country, because you require that quite a number of businesses have moved out of Nigeria.
So these are areas, these are loopholes that I think the government should start thinking of, filling up before they put out this policy statement. The ease of doing business, this in a way would also affect the ease of doing business in Nigeria. Now, you will agree with me that it's not a hike that is even the problem. It's not how do we have access to this. In the time past, it has been hiked, but we don't even have access to it. So accessibility, it's a very principal thing. So I think that the government should sit back, address the issue of accessibility, address the issue of the ripple effect it will have on the entire economy before going ahead with a hike. And not just waking up and then hiking the price and doing all manner of things.
Do you think that the privatization of the power sector, just like Labour put it out clearly during some of the demonstrations at the discourse and even at the NERC office, do you think it plays into why government is trying to move away from subsidizing? Because the bane of contention is some of these private companies are saying that the government is not fulfilling its part, by paying for the subsidies that they said they were going to pay for. And government says, okay, we're not ready to continue to pay this burden. We have to cut down cost of governance. I mean, that's another key issue. If you could just help us to make sense of it all.
Now, cutting cost of governance on which side? On their own side, or is it affecting them? How is that affecting them?
Are we even cutting
it down?
Governance?
How much is being expended to buy the bulletproof SUVs or what for the National Assembly? Are we cutting down the cost of governance? We are not cutting down the cost of governance in this country. That's just a charade. I think it's just a way of trying to play lip service and a way of justifying what they want to do. It's not cutting down the cost of governance
Now you see all of these things, because maybe someone just tuned in. We focusing on the Tinubu administration and just looking at some of the key policies of government that seems to be affecting people. You see this now all leading up to May 29th, because come May 29th, Nigerians are going to be like, okay, Mr. President, you've done 1 year in office. Look at all the things we're going through. And Labour is hell-bent that this has to be resolved. Even though there's going to be more demonstrations. Just on Thursday, the Niger State Labour is threatening to shut down dams over the issue of wage, coupled with, some of the demands that they are making, which electricity tariff hike, reversal is one of the demands.
So they are hiking it. There are people that are working at this dam. The discos, gencos, and all the co and all of them have workers that are working. Now, when they hike the electricity tariff, it also affects them. These people are part of the broader society. Now, are we looking at it in a holistic manner that when we increase electricity tariff, it's going to affect the man that works for the Kenji Dam? We should also have a conversation around increasing the monthly allowance or monthly salary that comes to this particular man to or woman to, so that he to cushion the effect that the ripple effect of the hike on this particular worker for this particular dance. So these are things that I think we need to plug. So until the government is able to plug this particular loophole, we should not have a conversation around hiking the price, hiking electricity tariff without thinking of workers' wages. It's something, it's appalling. For me, it's a way of adding more injury on another injury. Yeah. Nigerians are already suffering. Nigerians are going through a very difficult time. There are people, this morning, I was having a conversation with someone, and the person put a call across, and the person was just asking for, I was almost sent to tears. Said, I need just 1,000 naira. 1,000 naira is not up to $1. 1,000 naira to eat something today, just a day. 1,000 naira. Now, these are everyday Nigerians that are going. These are people that are going through difficult. There are people that are even looking for 500 naira. If you will agree with me. Now, the government government have not dealt with these issues of providing for the citizen, of providing efficient welfare packages for the citizens. We are looking at also adding more trouble to what is existing. So it is not hiking the price. It is not. I know that the discos, the different electricity distribution companies are business owner, and they need to make money. And we all know that things are on the rise. We understand that particular part of it. So government, instead of haven't removed subsidy, which we don't, some of us don't even believe that the subsidy is no longer being paid, that subsidy is still being paid till now, haven't removed subsidy just the way they put it. We should think of keeping the subsidy for electricity for a time being until we are able to plug this, because then we can then think of removing
because
it.
electricity has to do with power, and we're looking at the major key things like food affordability. You talk about power. These are key things that the average Nigerian needs to survive, and we're looking at the ability of this administration to be able to ensure that whatever subsidizing they want to do falls under the part, then every other thing else can be, whatever decision they want to do can be done. But I mean, this part of the conversation seems to be left out, in terms of how they are going, because people are going to keep complaining. No matter what you do, people are going to be complaining.
Definitely.
Well, at least there should be a level where people can say, oh, okay.
The human face. Policy should have a human face. Policy, decision of government should have a human face. Business should also be, it should be ethical. It should be, the ethical capitalism, I would say it, the ethical business approach. There should be a human face. If you rip me off of every dime I have today, how will I invest, or how will I come to buy something from you tomorrow? So if you take all the naira in my pocket today, I will not be able to buy anything. So you stand a risk of also losing your business if you rip me off the whole resource that I have today. So there should be that ethics in terms of doing business, ethics, the human face in terms of pushing government decisions. Until this is what I am saying, that government should have a human face to the decisions they are taking with respect to the hike in electricity tariff.
And the vice president yesterday talked about this dialogue that they are doing. I don't know if you recall during my introduction.
But sorry, can I ask? Let me ask a question. Are they paying electricity tariff? Is the Minister for Power paying electricity tariff?
Well, I'm not in the position. The minister will speak for himself.
The National Assembly members, are they paying electricity tariff? So we should start from them.
The government is paying for them. I don't know if you
why should the government pay for? Why should the government use my own? If I employ you, you still expect me to pay to take up your bills? We employ them as Nigerians. We employ them to work for us. We have employed them. We are paying them a salary.
We should not also take care of that. These are my entitlements.
Why should it be an entitlement? I am not entitled to that as a Nigerian.
That is for the lawmakers to answer. But the key fact now, because when we're looking at the 1 year, road to 1 year, thankfully, at least this administration even wants to do like an assessment of what they've done from the meetings that the vice president had earlier today regarding the dialogue, to look at how they can consolidate on what they are doing. Well, this human aspect that you mentioned now seems to be not imputed into the conversations that they had and will continue to have, pending the 29th of May. But we would hopeful that these things can be raised. But quickly, before we run out of time, Arame, the issue of ASU is something that has been lingering over and over again. Well, let's just remind you quickly that the Academic Staff Union of Universities threatened to down tools after 2 weeks. That's another warning. If the president, fails to pay public university lecturers their withheld salaries, and the ASU president, Emmanuel Osadeke, said it is unfair for federal government to pay lecturers 4 months of their 2022 withheld salaries and hold on to that of the 3.5 months. And the Staff Union of Universities threatened nationwide strike, talking about the appointment of governing councils for federal universities, which has been stalled for quite some time now. But you look at the issue of ASU, this is something that progressed from the Buhari administration, down to President Tinubu's administration. But I don't know if the workers' welfare is something that he's keen on. But I think when you look at the education agenda of Mr. President, it is geared towards more of the student, which is still a business form for government, because if they have access to these loans, which Sawyer said will be available on the 24th of May, they will still have to pay back with interest.
It's not free.
So when you look at the education agenda of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in the light of the fact that the lecturers, the ASU workers, are demanding that something is done, to alleviate their plight, how do you think moving towards this 1-year anniversary, there can be consolidation, just like the Vice President is saying?
The ASU problem has come a long way, and I agree with, just take this with me, that it's not something that is peculiar to just Nigeria alone. Even in the United Kingdom, they go on strike. Let's put that on record, that it's not something that is peculiar to just Nigeria. But having said that, I would also want to drop it here that I've been trying to take a study around the world, around trying to look at different educational policies and educational system across the world. I have not also seen where outrightly public tertiary education is it's something that is being catered for by the government. Most times the public tertiary education is being privatized. Harvard is not owned by the United States of America, by the US government. Stanford is not owned by the US government.
Oxford, College, the University of Sussex, where I also went to, it's partly government and partly the private sector. So there is that private sector approach to it. So, having said that, the government should sit back and also rethink. And these are part of what I also think that the government needs to begin to look into in terms of the student loan. I will come to that later. The government needs to think of having a progressive framework for privatizing the tertiary public institution. One, it will help for the effectiveness of this particular system. And I say this, yes, I stand the risk of being criticized by some persons that some of our lecturers, not all, some of our professors and lecturers in the public university are docile. Some of them are not doing anything. They are not researching. They are using books that, lecturers know that they used 30 years ago. But that doesn't mean that the government should not pay them their salaries.
No, I'm coming to that. They are using that to teach. So one, the creativity, innovativeness of the public institutions will come to play when we are able to think through privatizing that system and having a robust framework that enhance the productivity of those who are teaching within the public institution. But having said that, until this is done, the government should make sure they pay them, because they have worked for this money. They should pay them. And this is where I still go back to the issue of the 90 billion. What are we doing? Why didn't the government should think of plugging that money into the educational system to solve the ASU problem, instead of sending children back home, sending these young
So we're looking at
prioritizing our finances to the sector that actually need it, and not scattering it on different things, on frivolities. I call it frivolities. So we should prioritize our finances, our resources, to finance the critical sector of the economy, instead of pushing this money into things that really do not add value to us as a country.
Now, let's just delve away from the education aspect and just look at the prudence of spending in terms of this administration. President Bola Tinubu signed the approval of the Orosaye report, and now we basically have not seen anything regarding that light, because when you look at the outrage over some of the monies that have been earmarked for some of these, will I say, peripheral, things or events or necessities, as you would want to call it. I mean, we've not really seen that, there's this drive to want to cut governance and then redirect funding to key areas that can drive socioeconomic growth for the people.
It's mere talk. We talk, but we don't stay true to what we say as a people. And I think it's something that is inherent in our value, and this is something we need to correct. I'm sorry to say this, that that value of staying true to what we profess as a people is something that is very difficult for us as a country. I'm not excusing myself from that as well too. It's a value that we need to go back to start teaching our children: honesty, integrity, and this is playing out in our day-to-day life in our governance system. So the government have not outrightly, it's an approval, it's not implementation. So there is a policy design phase, there is a policy adoption phase, there is also an implementation phase. So it is now time to move into the implementation phase, and the implementation phase is what we are seeing, that they are not staying true to it. They have approved it. Everybody has clapped hand for it.
So as we begin to have heightened conversation regarding this 1 year in office of Tinubu,
so the
will begin to are you hopeful that this administration is able to at least get the minds of the people and watch programs like Politics Now and hear some of the conversations that Nigerians are talking about that can really impact their life?
They hear, but it is not about hearing. It is not about getting feedback. It's not about dialogue. It's about staying true to it. It's about implementation. It's about adapting this feedback into our planning. The government have gotten series of feedback over the period of time. I know there are the president, when he came, he set up, he appointed some 6 different special advisors on community engagement. And I know, if not for everyone, I know one of them, the one for North Central, that has been doing some sort of community engagement. And I know from this community engagement, there have been feedback for the government. And I'm very, very sure that this particular SEs had given the government this particular feedback. The government are reading newspaper. They are listening to the news media every day. So it is not about hearing this thing. It's not about listening to it. It's not about saying anything about this thing. It's about staying true to what you have. Implementation, adaptation, implementation, adaptation. How are we implementing this feedback? How are we adapting it into our planning as a country, as a government? That is what we should focus on. It is not about dialogue.
Well,
we can talk about dialogue, we can talk about feedback for
the sake of over 200 million plus people. We do hope that these conversations can continue, and thankfully the government is actually talking about it. But beyond just the vice president, because the lecture that happened today, rather the dialogue, was just basically the vice president. So we would hopefully love to see Mr. President get to talk with not just people of his cabinet, but probably select Nigerians to hear from him.
But it's
like
a high level. But it's a high level dialogue.
When was the last time we saw the president of Nigeria, have a conversation with just ordinary Nigerians and get a feel?
No, he's a president of
so that he can suck in all that concern and then do something.
For me, the president of Nigeria.
The masses.
For me, I think the president of Nigeria is the president of the political class, the president of the elitist class. It's not the president of the people. Because if he is the president of the people,
yes,
you should come to my community and listen to what I have to say, and then get the balls how I feel.
Again, thank you so much for coming on Politics Now to make unique
Very much.
sense of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu-led administration over the past 1 year. We will continue to have these conversations as we are looking up to May 29th of 2024, where the president will mark 1 year in office. So once again, thank you so much for being with us. Our time is up. We've got to go, and we'll be right back, of course, regularly right here on LN 24/7 to have our conversations regarding the politics of Nigeria and beyond the world. Once again, thank you for watching. Bye for now.